Are you going into a toxic environment? Let's find out. So, today I'll be talking about some of the red flags that you can experience or see during an interview when you're looking for a new job. There are a lot of red flags that you can see in different experiences depending on what you're interviewing or what are things that you're not looking towards in a job. And definitely I recommend to Google, what red flags or what things to look out for, what questions to ask, depending on what you're looking for the job. But right now I'm just kind of picking the ones that I have had experience with. I've actually had one interview where I actually felt like, okay, I don't want to be working here. I'm just gonna leave. I did stay throughout the entire interview, but at one point I realized this was not a place where I wanted to be working at. And I actually had a follow-up interview already scheduled for that same company, and I went and canceled it because I was not interested based on all the red flags that I had experienced during that interview, which are a lot of examples that I'm gonna point out today. And then some of them will be just a mixture. I'm not gonna really specify what interviews were one companies or anything. They were all while I was looking for the job that I am now. So I did interview multiple places. So they're a collection, and it's just kind of like what I have gone through and what I look for personally, and some of the things that really stood out that are like, okay, this indicates that maybe it's not the best place for me to work at. So let's start with negative interviewer attitude. So what is the attitude that the person that's interviewing has towards the interview, towards you, and towards their job? So if they're not excited about what their job or what they're doing, or they're also not prepared, they're rushing, or they haven't even looked at your interview, it tells you a lot about where you're gonna work at. And also, if it's, let's say it's via the interview where you're hiring the hiring manager, so someone that will be your manager eventually. This means that they're not prepared. They're not really looking into actually hiring someone that's fit for the job, but mostly just trying to fill a gap. If they're excited, on the other hand, and you hear them talk about what they're working on, or like what they're looking at from like a person, like example you that you're interviewing, or they show you about the company, a tour, and they're excited to tell you what they're working on or some of the issues, then you're able to tell that they're interested, they like what they do, it's a good place to work at because they have enjoyed it, and they're also looking forward to having someone new on their team and mentoring them through that process and guiding them through that process. So keep an eye of how prepared they are and what attitude they have when you show up to that interview. And this one kind of transitions into the next point. The next red flag is having tension during a group interview. So this one is a little bit more advanced. You have your initial interview usually with talent acquisition or HR, then with the hiring manager, and then usually follow-ups a group interview. This is when you have your opportunity to search for, what is the environment, how do they get along, especially when you see that, sometimes you have the hiring manager, which will be, let's say, the engineering manager or your manager, that will be when you start. Sometimes you also have an engineer that will be your colleague. You both report to that manager. Sometimes you even have your manager's manager. So you get different levels and different interactions that you get to experience. So what is the environment here? Are they all comfortable and they're prepared? How are they handling taking turns asking the questions? Is there quiet? How are they interacting? I had two opposite ones, and one was where it was only two people. It was a hiring manager and one that would be my colleague, and you could tell from the way they even sat at the table that they were not really, they didn't have a good connection. Like one was like this and the other one was like on the other side of the table. Like they were as far as they could from each other in that room. Either what room was bigger or the table was bigger, they will be far away from each other. So from there on, I already knew that just from that interaction, there was already, you could tell that it wasn't as comfortable. The other one that I had, for example, was completely the opposite. That one was with 4 people. And from the moment I started, it was after hours, so like it was after work, so it was like 5 p.m. and later, so it was pretty late, and they had decided to stay just to take me for the interview. And there was some tension. They were talking about like food and how they had to get lunch for this person to convince him to stay for the interview, and I felt really comfortable from the start. So like I was comfortable laughing, or just like in general, it was a different environment to go into the interview than just going quietly. You're the new person and you're just like even like nervous to take a sip of your water. But in that one, I felt really comfortable. So watch out for that. I'm telling you, the one where I saw the interactions between my colleague and what would be the hiring manager was really, really tension, and there there was also just kind of like mismatching on their answers, like kind of a little bit contradicting. I didn't really feel comfortable, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, I will be working in this team, so this is literally what I expect it to be when I'm in like group meetings or team meetings. So keep an eye out for those interactions. Also, the another thing before I move on is like, how are they welcome you into that team? So, whether it's 2 people, whether it's 4, whether it's 10 on that group interview, how are they treating you into, being part of that team? How do you feel yourself joining that team? Okay, so the next one is, and this one is more popular, and this one I don't really have a lot of like a big experience of like something bad, but instead something good that shows me that it doesn't always have to be that way. So a chaotic process. So how is the interview process? Is there an order? Is there like kind of like a level of interviews that they usually run someone that is interviewing through, or is it just like they have no idea what's going on and you find yourself kind of hard trying to find out like information or what's the next step? So for me, I always find out that there was that initial interview, then with the hiring manager, and then a group interview, which usually involved actually coming into site, because we were in times where people were working from home and it wasn't we were still doing the transition, but usually the third one would include that group interview, and a lot of the times going and doing a tour and seeing the facilities. So I kind of got used to that process, and that was what I was expecting, and probably what I would expect on other, if I find myself looking for a job eventually in the future, it will be, I already have like a structure that I am expecting. So I know that it's a process or somewhat of like a familiar order, and it doesn't have to be where you're just like trying to find out information and you don't really get the answers that you want, or you don't know what's going on. So definitely, if that's something that comes up, or you find yourself in that place, then it might mean that even when you start working, it might be just as chaotic, and it might not be order where in the office or in the projects that you're working with. The next one is vague answers. So this interview is not just for them to find you, it's for you to find where you want to work at. So definitely come into the interviews with questions to ask the team or ask the manager or whoever that is interviewing you. And be sure that, you're getting the answers of the questions that you have, because those are going to be important for you to identify if that's a place where you want to work at or not. So if you just don't get like an actual answer, or they're trying to avoid it, it might mean that they're trying to hide something. For example, I was asking, how much, what does the week look like for an engineer like me? Is there usual overtime or like weekends, or like when do they need us outside of working hours, or like, what is the workload that I expect? And it was just, the answer that I got was more of like, I don't make anyone stay, it's not mandatory, but I do expect them to meet, these certain deadlines and stuff like that. But I just wanted to know exactly, I know it changes and it varies per seasons or per projects, but are we looking at a place where people usually respect their working hours? Or is there a place where, you find yourself working overtime every single day, or working, a lot of weekends? And I did not get an answer, so then I turned into the other person in the interview, which was someone that would be an engineer like me in the team, and I asked the same question and I got a contradicting answer. So not only did I get a vague answer, then I got a contradicting answer. An answer of, no, there's no overtime, or no, I don't find myself working more than, the 40 hours or stuff like that, and then goes on and tells me about all the times that he's working late, all the weekends that he's here, and just making it sound like, no, I'm here pretty much all my life. So at that point, I was just more like, well, I am not sure at this point what the answer is, but it also sounds like you're not really trying to tell me what's going on. So to me, that was kind of like, okay, well, I don't feel comfortable anymore. Other questions that I asked are like, what are the growth opportunities? How can I find myself growing or developing into bigger roles or into leadership, something that I'm really interested in? And, I got, for example, now a hesitant answer, or just trying to kind of like fill an answer that I wanted to hear, but that I could tell that they were just making it up as they were going, well, there are opportunities in some ways, and just kind of like not really having like a point where they were getting at, but just trying to fill those answers of like, yeah, there is, because that's what I was looking for, but in reality, it wasn't really a way. It was more of like a job where I was gonna be that in that job, and it was pretty much it. There was no really paths. And I actually, during that same interview, I got this question that just kind of told me like, wait, are you actually trying to find someone, or are you trying to scare me away from it? And it was like, well, why are you applying to this job? And it was kind of like in that tone, like, but why? And I'm like, well, I have the background and it's something I like doing, like, and like, what's wrong with it? Like, can you tell me? So that one already was a really dead like key, that it was just like, well, I mean, they obviously can't believe that somebody wants to, or that me wants to go into that job, so there must be something terribly wrong with that position. The next one, I didn't know how to word this one, and I don't know how often it happens, but it happened to me. And at the end of the day, I came up with guilt tripping. So during the entire interview, they made me feel bad about the comments or about questions that I would ask. So what I would do is, like, every time I asked something or they told me some information from a question that I did, or like we went over anything, the hiring manager will end with, is that going to be a problem? And a lot of the times it was not a problem, but just I heard it at least 20 times during the interview, and it was alarming. It was like, I feel like he was realizing that it was a toxic environment, and I was finding out. And at the same time, he was asking me like, is that going to be a problem? Are you going to have a problem with not being a human being? And I'm just like, yes. But I mean, not all the answers were bad, but like, for example, when I didn't have a question right away, they were like, are you sure you don't have any more questions? Or like, we had a project, they showed me one of the, like, for example, an example of a problem that we would be targeting during, you know, my role. And they asked me, you know, how long do you think that will take you to build? And then they would tell me what they were expecting to build something. And then just kind of going through that discussion a lot of times, like, is that going to be a problem? Traveling, I asked, you know, how much traveling was in that job, and there wasn't a lot. It was really big. They couldn't tell me like a percentage or how often. It was just like, not really. And then it just kind of like wouldn't give me an actual answer, which to me is like an important question. You know, if it's more than this much, then I'm not interested. If this less, then I am more than happy. Like, I am traveling in this job and have no problem, because it's not like extremely often. For example, my dad would be gone every 2 weeks. He would be gone for 2 weeks. So it was 50% of the time. And I really don't want to do that for my life. So to me, it's just, I keep an eye out for that, like how much travel there is, because I have a lot going on. My family, my house, Latina engineer. And so the answer that I got was a little bit vague, but it was leaning towards there was not really a lot. And then again, followed by, is that going to be a problem? And to me, there wasn't going to be a problem, because it wasn't a lot of travel. So no, there's not going to be a problem. And it was just a lot of things like that. Things that I would ask, and they would give me an answer, and they would be like, is that going to be a problem? And I'm like, well, maybe. Like, you're making me feel like I shouldn't have asked that question, or that I should be okay with the answer no matter what it is, even if it's already leaning towards like something that I might not be okay with, that you're already making me feel bad for if I'm like hesitant to say no. And then the other one is, and I think this one is important and this one is more relevant, but it's pressure to get things done, or how much work there is. So during one job interview, that was really an emphasis of how fast you could get a project done, how much work you were going to do, how many problems or projects they had, and why they were getting people higher. I asked about, you know, what their challenges were, and they reassured me multiple times that it was that they had 50 projects, but I wanted to know what the issues within those projects were. Okay, I get it, you have a lot of work to do, but like, what is it usually, like, besides once you get into a project, what are the issues? And I just got reminded of, there's just a lot of work. So it was that, and also the fact of like, you know, how are you gonna meet deadlines if you can't meet them, to the point where I'm like, well, you know, you get through a phase where you have to set your project and you have to see if it's feasible or not. If you give me a deadline of like that is completely unreasonable, well, you knew from the start that you couldn't finish it. So how can you reach that deadline? So to me, it was important, like, do I have a voice in those projects, or do I just get told like, you have 2 days to do this, when in reality it's going to take me a month? And how much are you going to pressure me to do that? And, you know, it's unrealistic, because even if I put 24-hour days, I'm still not going to get it done. So that was another thing that was really emphasized, that I felt like I was selling my soul and my entirety of my time to the company, because they emphasized so much how much hard work I had to do, and how, you know, the deadlines were so critical, and how much, you know, we had to make sure that they were there. And like projects, we were already setting like deadlines when I hadn't even like had an offer yet, they were already like, well, you need to finish it in this much amount of time. And it's like, I've never done something like that, so I have no idea if that's gonna take me that long. So it was really emphasized, and I just felt like I was going to be a robot and I was going to be a slave to that job, and I was going to find myself working a lot of overtime. And if you haven't caught it right now yet, a lot of these situations are from one specific interview, and you can kind of like form that environment where I was like, I walked out running from there because I was like, this is not happening. And I haven't even gotten to the worst experience from that same interview yet, which is the next red flag, and it is not being heard. So are they answering your questions? Are they acknowledging your answers? And are they actually getting you the information that you need? Or are they just trying to listen to and looking for what they expect or want to hear? You know, they're asking you questions. If you answer something, is it something that they wanted to hear? And if it's not, how are they responding to that? How are they reacting? Are they dismissing it? Or if you ask a question, are they actually acknowledging? Are they giving you the feedback or the information that you need? Or are they just kind of like dismissing it or giving you other like answers, or just giving you a really vague answer? So for me, it was a question that I got asked. I replied. They didn't like the answer. They asked me again. I gave them the same answer. They asked me again. We started getting first. So I'll tell you the actual question. So the question was, if you're working on a project and somebody comes in and decides or tells you that you need to change something in your design, what are you going to do about it? My logic answer was, well, when you have a project and you start it or you have design, I usually have a brainstorming session where I include my team and we include all the problems, all the solutions, everything that can go in and out, and we analyze that and we pick the best solution. Once that happens, and if it's, let's say, a smaller project where it's just a design that I've completely focused on and I can bring to the table later, then it's my design, and I can, host another meeting to, take inputs on how to advance or not. But at the end of the day, I own it. Just say if it was something bigger, like an entire car and there's multiple engineer workings, then yeah. But with this, it was more of like something new or working specifically. So I went for like, well, if they come back, like, when I'm already more than 50% with the project or with the design, and they come and tell me, oh, I don't like this because it's pink and it needs to be blue, and that's gonna make me delay or like go back in my process and lose time, then I'm gonna be like, no, because there's no real reasoning. So that was my reasoning. Like, is it gonna, like, it's what's currently gonna be an error? Like, is it gonna fail because I don't change it? Is there a necessary change, or is it just because they want to do the change because they feel like it? And it was just kind of like the answer was like, well, what happens if they tell you to change it? I'm like, well, is the change necessary or not? It's my design. At the end of the day, I am taking responsibility for this and I make the decision. So if it's not reasonable, if there's not an actual like reason behind it, then I'm not going to change it. So they didn't like that answer. So they went and asked me again, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I'm not going to change it. So we started getting frustrated. He started getting angry. I started getting angry. I was like, you know what? I don't understand the question. Let's move to the next one because I am about to lose it and start yelling here. So then we moved to the next one. I was like, this is not going to work out because I'm telling you what I'm thinking. You don't like it. You decide to ignore it. You decide to get the information that you want, the words that you expect to hear from me. I'm not going to say them because that's not the way I work or the way I think or what you're looking for. So it's definitely a really big indicator of, one, we're not going to work together good. There's already tension, we're already getting angry at each other, and we're just in an interview. Like, I'm about to walk out of here. So it was just a dead giveaway that, I don't want to work here. I don't like the way that you're a leader, and I also don't appreciate that you're not listening to my answers or my reasoning, and you're not open to discussion. You're just looking for me to change my mind to what you want to hear. That was a long one. Okay, there's two more, and the next one is seeing you as a machine and not as a human. I guess that's really specific, but dismissing that you have a life outside of work. So in my resume, I have Latina engineer because it's pretty public. By this point, people are gonna find out anyway. So I just have it as volunteering at the very end. Use a little paragraph of what I do. And it was an interview where there were two people. So my colleague was like, oh, I'm interested. Can you tell me more about this? I can talk to you about Latina engineer all day. So I did a little short abstract of what I do, but you could right away tell that I get really excited. So then we started talking a little bit about it. I turned to my hiring manager. The hiring manager has only one comment to make, one question to ask. And he's like, is that going to interfere with your work? And I was so mad. like I already had like 4 reasons to walk out of this interview, and I respect I haven't left, but this is the final drop. Like, I'm not interested in ever coming back here again. So I was really disappointed. I was really irritated that this is the only question that he had interested in about that topic. I answered him right away. I was like, no, this is not going to interfere in my work. It has not had for 2 years, and I know that my job is like one responsibility and Latina engineer is something else. It is a volunteer right now, and I know how to manage my time, and I know my limits, and I also know that work is not going to take my entirety of my time either. After work I have a life, and I decide what to do with it. And just feeling that that he didn't really value what I decided to do with my time. Also because it's something where I'm actually helping people. I'm creating scholarships, I'm making resources, I'm recording this video, and that the only thing that you see it as is a distraction was really insulting, because I've been really working a lot at this. So it was just like, I already didn't want to be here to start with, but this, like, at this level or at this point in the interview. And then the last thing is gut feeling. If your gut is telling you that this is not where you should be working, then it might mean that, maybe you can't write it down, you can't really tell what it is, but you know that it's not it, then don't go for it. You might end up finding out later. I did for one of the interviews. It's not the same one. This one was really clear, the one I've been telling you a lot about. There was another one that had a higher offer, and it was a little bit more, it was a lot more appealing as far as benefits and pay and everything. But at the end of the day, something was telling me not to do it, and I didn't take that one. I ended up taking another job offer, and at the end of the day, I was a little, like, I did find out that it wasn't going to be a place where I was going to be happy at. So if there's something telling you not to do it, then maybe wait. There's going to be more opportunities, and there's always the benefits that you're looking for, or like the pay that you're looking for. Especially if you have a job and you're not like jobless searching for something, then please find that place where you're gonna be happy with it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this. I hadn't sat down for a while to record something. I have a couple more ideas that I want to do before I leave to Mexico, because I am leaving for Mexico for about 2.5 weeks, and I'm getting married, so I'm trying to leave some content and get back to videos, because it makes me happy to record, but I never have time to do it. So if you are watching this and you're not subscribed, then subscribe, because I have a few more coming. And if you like this video, please give it a like. Thank you. Bye.